This week, quarterfinals are over. We have only 4 teams remaining. The race is super close. Another Korean-Chinese finals. And more on this week's Vision and Isle. Hello, one and all. My name is Sam, and if you're new here, I've watched every single best of 5 for the qualifying regions in the all participating regions for their playoffs, regional qualifiers, all of those things, and every game from Worlds, and review them. Or quite honestly, just take a look at everything that's going on. This week, we've got a lot of stuff going on, but first and foremost, if you're interested in anything that I got going, in the links in the doobly-doo, there is the TikTok in which you can see all the reviews of every particular best of 5 that I watch as they happen. The document that I show all the stats that I use to analyze these teams from their summer runs, and as well as my Pickems to see if you want to just kind of see where I am making choices. But quarterfinals is over. Only 4 teams remain. And honestly, part of this lineup was kind of expected. When you look at Weibo, I think is the only notable exception here. There's a world that many people were expecting otherwise, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. First and foremost, let's actually review these quarterfinal best of 5s. So without further ado, let's take a watch. We say goodbye to LNG. They've shown us some incredible play so far at Worlds, and this series is no different. Some strong coordination and skirmishing, solid understanding of their win conditions and approach to neutrals, and once leads are held, they have some decent approach to ballooning their leads. Their problems come in when forced to play from behind, as they repeatedly overforce their engages and skirmishing that are unfavorable to their situations, on top of the fact of struggling to evaluate the stage of the map and overall macro plays. This is kind of the result that we get from them. Now, Weibo Gaming, for their part, don't have a warm-up game, which is awesome, leading to some strong showings that many expected them from the start. Incredible skirmishing and coordination, consistent ballooning of leads, fantastic macro approaches especially, and almost zero egregious errors. And while there are some choices that can be viewed as questionable skirmishing-wise, the fact that this is the level of consistency that came out today is already such a good sign out of Weibo going into the semifinals. Now, let's see if this kind of level of play sticks around for them also going into the semis. My MVP for the series is Breathe, whose side lane pressure and skirmishing really rocked LNG off course. This was the quarterfinals. LNG Esports, the 3rd seed of the LPL, versus Weibo Gaming, the 4th seed of the LPL. We say goodbye to Hanwha Life Esports. This is one of their best performances no matter the result of this series. It was tough and difficult, in fact, from both teams. They had incredible vision play, neutral approaches, skirmishing powers, coordination, macro plays, the list goes on and on. Frankly, the thing that mostly does them in this series is hesitation, especially in moments while playing from behind, or what seems like a situation they assume is playing from behind. Bitty from their end, just eke it out slightly better this go around. Same thing from them, solid neutrals, skirmishing, early game approaches, understanding of their win conditions, and coordination. I think the biggest difference here is their individual head-to-head matchups as players that are just stronger and more consistent overall. In moments where any one member needed to play clutch, they did, but that meant that they opted for a lot more risky plays than I think is reasonable from them to actually try. Combine that with what looks like another string of warm-up games, and I would have had concerns for their next series if it wasn't for the very clear improvements that they're showing us and an incredibly familiar matchup against Weibo Gaming for the semifinals. My MVP for this series is Elk, who kept making game-winning plays over and over again. It was just so... This was the quarterfinals. Hanwha Life Esports, the 1st seed of LSK, versus Bitty Gaming, the 1st seed of the LPL. We say goodbye to Top Esports. The scoreline is very deceptive, as They fought so incredibly hard during the series. Strong macros, proactivity, excellent coordination and skirmishing, proper approaches to neutrals. Frankly speaking, if this was any other team on any other day, this would have been a much more competitive series. In the moments that they were given space, you could see how close the whole thing would have been with any leads at all. Moments of micro errors or slight misreads on the macro didn't help, but that's not really what did them in this series. T1's near flawless approach this go around is the cause. Never giving their opponents the chance to find any leads, being proactive in a way that makes everyone seem so slow in comparison, strong control and restraint that had not been seen from them in a long time, on top of their already incredible macro and neutral plays, coordination and skirmishing strengths. They made this series look like the win was just going to be inevitable, and somehow it might as well be. There are still moments of Team 1's shenanigans that peek through at the tail end of Game 3 that hopefully they correct before facing what is likely a Gen G that they haven't beaten in a while. My MVP of the series is Keria, as his map pressure and skirmishing really put a toll on Top Esports. This was the quarterfinals. Top Esports, the second seed of the LPL, versus T1, the fourth seed of the LCK. We say goodbye to FlyQuest. This was the expected result, but not the expected score or performance from them. Some very solid early game play, great read on their own win conditions, macro approach, incredible skirmishing and coordination all around. FlyQuest did more than anyone would expect from them and reached their peak performance frequently this series. But their inconsistent early game play, their reliance on being able to play from behind, and some strange proactivity is still all there. And while they had huge improvements this go around, they didn't correct what was needed when it was needed. Gen G, for their part, gave many pause for concern. We still see their fantastic vision play, coordination, macro approach, neutral play, and ballooning of leads, but what we also see is their lack of respect, a play by the numbers approach, and frankly, bizarre micro and macro errors that we usually don't see from them. They were expected to be the heavy favorites, and while they fulfilled the expected win, how they got there should give them second thoughts as they head off to face off an empowered T1. My MVP for the series is Keen, who put so much pressure on FlyQuest during these skirmishes. This was the quarterfinals. FlyQuest, the first seed of the LCS, versus Gen G, the second seed of the LCK. We say goodbye to LNG. Quite honestly, they did much better, but I think part of that has to do with the fact that they could play with their regular roster. Otherwise, with the regular roster, they played kind of as expected. And I think they just drew partially the short straw. They probably would have made it further with any other team, I think. Not with BDBD or Gen G, but I think they could have given a run of the money for T1 and FlyQuest especially. The main thing, however, is that they've been so strong just by default through their laurels that it didn't seem like they did anything to really adapt. And like, it's hard to do so when you come out the gate really strong, like perfect 3-0, no games dropped, and the first people that you have to face are a team that you go 50-50 on in the year. And this time they just got the better of you. I feel like it's a little unfortunate, but it is reflective in their score, especially since they were going to be facing off against Bitty Bitty anyways, and the run would have probably ended in the next round anyways. But as far as it's concerned, they showed why they were so scary to begin with and why their placement as the third seed came to a little bit of a surprise for for many. Let's hope that most of this roster stays intact next year and they're better. We say goodbye to Hanwha Life Esports. Frankly, they got the biggest short straw out of this situation. And they played exceptionally well given the fact the facing off against Bitty Bitty is already a difficult scenario, and they were playing everything almost correctly by all other metrics. Fantastic vision, great approach to coordination, all of that stuff. All of the really good stuff within League of Legends. And while they did not have a perfect run, going into Worlds. In fact, there are some hiccups here and there. It is to be noted that this is a squad who really shocked and surprised many to becoming the first seed. So, given all of that, this, while feeling like they fall short, many would have said, including I, that they would have made it to the semifinals in other circumstances, they should feel pretty proud about how this went all down. The ways in which they played the game, how they represented the region. This was so close, and the margins were so small that the biggest difference is less even about consistency, but just about how sharp and fast your decision making is at any given moment. And they just faced off against a team who was just that much better a lot more often. That kind of sucks. And again, I hope that this squad gets the chance to stick together a little bit longer also. And we say goodbye to Top Esports, who, and this is the third time in a row I have to say this was always going to be a bunch of short straws to be drawn. Every team was really strong. T1 is an expert at disqualifying, or not disqualifying, but eliminating Chinese teams from Worlds. And they've been improving at a rate that is, again, typical of T1 at Worlds. And I would say that there, and I've mentioned again in like the review, that there are moments of which there's some bizarre reads, either macro or micro, or just honestly small hiccups here and there from top. But as a performance overall during the tournament, this is a strong squad. I don't think it has it did not have the heights that I expected. Again, many people before LNG got the announcement that they were going to be playing with the regular roster, many teams would have put them in the top 4. And under certain circumstances, they might have been able to. Facing off against Hanwha Life, I can see that becoming very, very close. Facing off against FlyQuest, I could see that going. But given that, this is, to me, a team that was given an unfortunate scenario of facing off a T1 who seems to be on their A game, and who they themselves played as best as they could, with not many strong notes for me to give off their performance of this particular best of 5. I hope they get to stay longer also. These are some strong-ass teams. And we say goodbye to FlyQuest. If there was ever a time a team proved what I said at the beginning or right before this tournament, that you can see a clear spectrum of who's at the bottom and who's at top, but like the in-betweens, how close the competition actually is, the margins are not that far apart from one another. Thank you. This should make everybody happy. Okay, not happy. This should make everybody understand that just because they were favorites and there was a very good consensus of who the favorites were, that it wasn't like a huge gap. I think the biggest gap really is just Bitty Bitty, who's just playing on a whole other level. So, to me, this performance out of them should ignite some fire underneath the upcoming Americas region. I don't know what they're going to be calling it. I've been calling it NASA amongst my friends, NASA. Honestly, if anything, how well they faced off against Genji here, a team who many expect just to get to the finals just from the drawing, should put pause on concern, or not, should put pause on the assumption that there is such a huge gap between these regions. I don't think that's the case. I think the case here is, what does investment look like long term when you dedicate to it? And it looks like a 5-game series against one of the tournament favorites. Overall, this particular quarterfinals emboldens my excitement that I had at the start of how close the competition was really going to be, and confirmed it in so many ways. There is a bunch of ways in which you could look at this situation, and while the semifinals feels more cut and dry, it doesn't feel guaranteed. The expectations, Bitty Bitty beating Weibo again, that is a classic, or it's a rematch of the grand finals, and Gen G versus T1. Gen G is expected to win as they've not lost against T1 in a long time. Like an absurd amount of time. But Weibo, regularly known as the most consistently inconsistent with very high highs and bizarre lows, could make the upset. We've already seen it happen at this point. T1, known for making these runs through the tournament and rarely misses finals at Worlds. They've qualified so many times, and most times, I think it's 5 out of the 8 times previously that they've qualified for Worlds have they made to finals. And won 4 of them. I'd be hard-pressed to say that if you are trying to get a Pickem's win, that you should pick T1 or Weibo for them to win. Not only do the stats say otherwise, but historically, matchup-wise, things say otherwise. And most people were expecting that the top 2, no matter what, were going to be Bitty Bitty and Genji. The stupid AI measuring tool or whatever power ranking thing that they got going thinks it. Most analysts thinks it. Like that is the route, and the draws themselves have given us a perfect storm for that to be the trajectory and point of event where those 2 teams meet. But I can't say that I have a little bit of doubt that it's going to go some other way. And frankly, I think it's just going to be down to who's faster at making decisions in the semifinals, who's more adaptive. And already seeds of doubt have been planted about Gen G's ability to be adaptive. The coordination, skirmishing, a whole bunch of like factors at play could make the difference. And because these are matchups that these teams are familiar with one another, I think a combination of not just adaptability and seeing how the meta has played out within the tournament, but how much do they keep from their knowledge of each other, and how much do they really rest on the laurels of what they've learned during the tournament. Because part of the fascinating thing is that the tournament so far has given us a meta that is very similar, not the same, but very similar to playoffs. And these teams know each other very well from that period of time and could, by all accounts, play a very similar set of best of 5, especially the Weibo versus Bitty Bitty. But they got absolutely trounced the last time. So it's just a matter of seeing where this goes. But those are my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Which of the 4 best of 5s were your favorite? Frankly, I was flabbergasted and on the edge of my seat with the FlyQuest Gen G one. Which of the 2 semifinals are you best looking forward to? And which finals do you think is going to be like the grand finals of Worlds 2024? I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching. I so greatly appreciate it. I am on the fence on whether or not next week we'll have a video or I will just do one after the finals. We'll see. Depends on how wild we get them next time. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you all next time.